Whether you're looking to restore a family heirloom or you'd like to create something unique for a special occasion, hand knotting is a great way to string your beads, especially your very delicate pearls. I'm Christian Ross, and I'm going to show you how easy hand knotting on silk can really be. So first, gather your supplies. Of course, the first thing that you're going to need is the beads that you want to string. I'm using pearls that I picked up from a local bead shop. They're temporarily strung, which means that they're on a piece of string that, well, basically it's just temporary because you want to get these home and take this apart and use them as you want. They're not knotted in between. That's what we're going to do. The reason we hand knot pearls, in other words, we put a knot in between each pearl as we string them, is because they're very delicate. If they were to rub up against each other, then they would wear off the coating that nature has put on them, which would really make them very dull and very, just not pretty at all. Also, if you have a very nice strand of pearls, you don't want to lose them if the string breaks. If you hand knot in between each bead, then if the strand breaks, you might only lose one bead. The rest will stay on that strand because they have the knots in between holding them together. If you happen to be restringing a necklace that had already been knotted once but may have broken, then you're going to actually have to cut in between each one of the knots to take each pearl off. So the first tool that you might need is a pair of scissors. So I've got those. The next thing that you're going to need is your stringing material. Pearls are traditionally strung on silk thread just because it's very durable. So I have different types of silk thread. You can find silk thread at your local bead shop, and it generally comes on cards pre-wound in about 2-meter lengths that happen to have a needle already attached. It's very handy. You don't have to have a sewing needle or anything like that to be able to string your pearls. Here is an example of what this would look like, and here is the needle that is attached. All you have to do with that is straighten it out just a little bit, and you would unwrap your silk and you're ready to go. Another way silk is packaged is on spools. So you can pick up an entire spool of silk cord if that's what you like. The drawback to the spool, however, is the fact that it doesn't come with the needle attached, but I'll show you how to work around that. Something to know when you're choosing your silk cord, know that it comes in different sizes. Now, pearls are notorious for having smaller hole sizes, so you're going to be looking for a size 4 or a size 6 generally for your pearls. The last and most important tool that you're going to need is a good pair of tweezers. Now, you can pick up pearl knotting tweezers from your local bead shop, and that's what I recommend, but any type of very fine tipped tweezers will work for you. These are all the supplies that you're going to need to do your knotting. If you want to add a clasp to that, you may need a few more things, such as, well, actually your clasp, and any type of clasp would work. I have here a lobster claw clasp and a key tab that is going to go on the other end for the lobster claw to hook into. You need some way to attach your silk to this clasp, and you could just tie a knot in that. But I found these findings, which are really cool. I like them a lot. They're little compression findings where they have a channel that your cord goes through, and then you kind of squish that with a pair of pliers, and that's going to hold your cord. Now you're going to need something to attach this finding to your clasp, and there I have 2 jump rings. And of course, we're not going to be able to put all of this together with our fingers, so you'll need pliers. I have a pair of chain nose pliers, and you can use 2 chain nose pliers if you like. or I have a chain nose and a bent chain nose that come in handy. And of course, it's always handy to have a little bit of glue on hand. You can use your standard super strong glue or any type of bead stringing glue that you find. This will help if you need to stiffen your cord and make a needle out of it. I'll show you how to do that. Or if you just need to secure that final knot. So now that you have everything together, let's get started. I found it easier to string all of my beads first and then go ahead and knot them, as opposed to trying to string on a pearl, put the knot in it, string on another pearl, put the knot. I just found it's easier to string everything on first. So that's the first thing that you're going to need to do. If you're using the silk cord that comes on the card and has the needle on it, then what you're going to do is take all of your cord off, all of your silk cord off of the card, and then you want to stretch it because you don't want it to stretch after you have put your beads on there, because then you'll end up with spaces in between your knots. And the goal of this is to get everything as close together as possible. So you pull off your string, give it a little tug, and you're ready to go. Now, if you happen to be working with the spool that doesn't have the needle on it, let me give you a cool trick. I've got just a little bit of tissue here, and I have my glue, which happens to be a gel glue. So I'm going to put just a teeny tiny bit of this gel glue on my tissue. Just a drop. Then I'm taking the end of my silk cord and I'm setting it right there in the glue, fold it over and pull that through. Now what that did is that just saturated the end of my silk cord with that glue. Wait just a few minutes for that to stiffen up. I happen to have a quick dry glue there, and I'll show you the next step. It's been about 5 minutes. So what has happened is that this glue has made the end of my cord nice and stiff. So I come in with my scissors here and give it a point by just snipping off a little bit. And there we go. It's almost like a built-in needle. So the next step is to string all of your pearls. Now I'm going to work off of the spool just to make sure I have enough silk, but you can always cut a long piece and work that way. If you're putting a clasp on the end like I am, the very first thing that you need to do is string your clasp, because we're going to be working from one end of the necklace to the other, and it'll be harder to put the clasp on at the end. So I'm taking the stiffened silk end here, and I'm taking this compression end, and I'm going to go from the outside through. I'll show you what I'm talking about. After that, just start stringing your pearls. Once you have all your pearls strung, it's always a good idea to measure how long your necklace is so far. Adding knots is only going to add a little bit of length to it, so you need to make sure it's going to be long enough to fit around your neck. So I've got mine here, and I'm going to measure. I'm I'm looking at about 14 inches. By the time I add a clasp to it, it's going to be 15 inches. I really think that I need another inch or two. I can do that by adding more beads. If you have more beads, that's one option. Another thing that you could do is add a little bit of an extender chain, and that'll take up a little bit of that space that you need. But I'm going to go ahead and add a few beads because I got 2 strands. Then the very last step is to add the other compression finding to the end. You're going to be going in the opposite direction. So basically you're going from the end of that finding toward the loop. And then you can use your pliers here to reach in and grab that and pull it the rest of the way out. I ended up using a second strand to give me additional length, so I measured 20 inches so far. The knots in between are going to give me a little bit more length, and then my clasp setup is going to give me about an inch. So I'm looking at about a 21 to 22 inch strand of pearls. Okay, here's the part we've been waiting for. Now it's time to start knotting. First, we have to secure that compression clasp. If you actually plan on just tying your pearls, say they're long enough to make an endless strand, then you don't have to worry about this part. But if you're going to add your clasp with these compression fittings, the first thing that you're going to do is you take the end of your silk, and mine is still attached. The other end is still attached to my spool. But I'm taking the open end that I just finished stringing on, and I'm going to tie an overhand knot. All you have to do is you hold the end and you make a loop. So it just folds over itself, and then this very end here goes under and through. Just like that. Very easy. Pull that tight. Now, that's going to keep the end of this silk here from going back through that setting, but what you need to do is put a teeny drop of glue. It's not necessary, but I always like doing that just to make sure. So, I have my knot here. I'll set it down and add a teeny drop of glue. I love using this craft glue that has a very precise tip for this part. And then I let that dry, and when it does, we're going to start knotting. After this dries, I'm going to cut this knot, cut off the extra string right beyond the knot. Next, I pull down the compression clasp so that the knot sits right at the top, like so. Now I'm going to come in with my chain nose pliers and I'm going to squeeze that, and that part of the clasp will be set. Now we're going to use our tweezers and start knotting. So basically, remember that overhand knot that we did? I want you to do an overhand knot where you're at right now. And it's going to be set right up against your compression finding. So you can make that overhand knot by taking 2 fingers and wrapping the end around and then going down. Then you pull your fingers out of the way. That gives you that loop. Go ahead and pull that a little closer, but you don't want to pull it tight just yet with your fingers. So I have that a little closer. Now, here's the trick. You take your fine point tweezers here, and you're going to grab your silk where you want the knot to be. Going to go through this loop with your tweezers So you see the loop is around your tweezers now, and you're going to grab the silk right next to the clasp. The next step is to slide that loop down the tweezers and start to pull it tight. Not a lot of tension, you don't want to pull it really tight just yet. And when you see that knot get to be exactly where you want it to be, then you'll pull it tight and move your tweezers out of the way. So give it a little tug, then you can come in and pull. You can also take your tweezers, hold the cord, and pull, and that will slide the knot even closer. Next, slide down your first pearl. So now I have my pearl sitting next to the clasp and next to that knot that I just made. So we're putting a knot in between every pearl, so I need to make a knot right against this pearl. This is how you make nice tight knots. You have good sharp tweezers. So I'm going to grab this whole end piece here, and I'm going around, tuck that down through so that I have my loop. Reach in through the loop with my tweezers so that I grab right next to that pearl and pull. So I pull until that knot goes up right against my tweezers there, but it's not pulled incredibly tight yet. I get my tweezers out of the way. I grab onto the silk on the outside of the knot and slide. And that puts the knot right next to the pearl. It's really that easy. All you have to do, keep sliding down your pearls and continue knotting until you get to the other end of your necklace. So make your loop. Pass that through, so now you have your loop and your pearl. Take your tweezers, reach through that loop, and you grab next to the pearl there where you want that knot to end up. Pull everything close. Take your tweezers to the outside, slide everything down, and there you go. Almost there. Last pearl. That's a lot of knotting. All right, now slide that compression piece down. I made the knot right after the pearl. You slide that piece down, and then you're going to make a knot that's going to fit on the inside. Just to make it a little easier on myself, I've been working off the spool, so I can go ahead and cut this off now because I've reached the end. I'm not going to cut it up close yet, just going to make it easier. So I have a little tail here, and I'm going to make that knot that I've been making, that overhand knot. But I want that knot to be here, and I want that clasp to be down there. So I'm going to hold that knot, slide the clasp down. Now remember, to place your knot exactly where you want it to go, you're going to reach through your knot that hasn't been tied tight yet and grab your cord exactly where you want that knot to go. So I've got my tweezers sitting there, and I grab the end of my silk cord and I'm sliding that knot down the tweezers. There we go. Not pulling tight yet. Get my tweezers out of the way. Then, just like I was doing with the pearls and the silk, slide it close. Then I'm going to go back, add that drop of glue just like I did at the beginning, and then snip it off. So now I have my entire necklace strung. All I have to do now is use these loops on the end and attach my clasp. For my clasp assembly, remember, you have 2 jump rings, and you have the 2 pieces of the clasp, the lobster claw and the key tab where the lobster claw is going to hook onto. You take your 2 pliers, it could be chain nose, bent chain nose. Grab your jump ring, string your tab on one side, all right, and then you bring up that loop at the end of your necklace and slide that on your jump ring. And then close your jump ring. Then you do the same thing on the other side. I have my jump ring, and I can put that on my loop from my necklace, and then come back and add my lobster claw clasp. So I have everything stacked on here, and just go back and close that jump ring. Beautiful. All right, now let's see how long this ended up being. All right, with all of those knots and the clasp added, my necklace ends up being 23.5 inches. So that's a really nice length. Well, I hope you enjoyed this project. I certainly did. I love hand knotting my jewelry, as you can tell from all the pieces, including the very long one that I'm wearing. If you liked this video, don't forget to give me a like. Don't forget to subscribe, definitely, and leave me a comment below. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those as well. I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for much, much more. Now that you know, go make something.